Hey, you, in the carpool lane.
I know you're waiting for the podcast to start, but first, can we talk about that car? It's time for an upgrade, and we know the best place to buy it. Vandergrift Toyota, Honda, and Acura. You'll get a great deal on a dependable new or pre-owned family car and the best price for your trade. For more than 20 years, Vandergrift has attracted customers from across Texas with their award-winning service and exceptional selection. Plus, you can feel great about your purchase knowing Vandergrift supports local schools and charities with thousands of dollars in donations. Come for the sale, stay for the service. First-class service only from Vandergrift. Now pull up, would you? You're holding up the line.
It is No Gifts, Please, the parenting podcast by the pair with no real gifts, but a whole lot of gumption. Hey everyone, I'm Steve Noviello.
And I'm Jenny Anchondo.
It is holiday time.
Yes.
It's so nice. There's a chill in the air. We're doing all of the have you been to the Gaylord yet?
Little baby moon-ish staycation-ish.
Oh, right.
Yes, in November.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
I love that.
So it was like our last hurrah. We did Christmas early for Brighton, so that was our Christmas hurrah.
I love it. And the people there, Martha and that whole team there. Do you know Martha?
Yes.
Yeah, of course you know Martha.
And she, my gosh, and she just
has
the
adopted the most
cutest new
beautiful baby. Yes. The cutest. She's always so kind to us. So I will say I'm excited about our guest today because our struggle continues
with nutrition.
And I remember when the kids were babies, and especially Hudson, I would bring him to the doctor and I'd say, he's spitting up everything he eats. Doctor, I'm so worried. He's spitting up everything he eats. And he said, clearly he's not, because he's bigger than he was the last time you brought him here. It may seem like he is, but he's growing. And he said, don't worry about each meal. Worry about an overall trend of growing and nutrition.
And have you followed that?
I've really tried to, but now I feel like I've done that so much that we eat too many ketchup and cheese sandwiches on Turkey Burger Tuesday, right?
Okay.
Because I'm like, it's okay. You don't have to eat and my others, and Jacob is a great eater. I mean, he's really good about trying new things. Not trying all new things, but he's got a better appetite. Hudson, Hudson likes, he doesn't like dinner, but he likes breakfast, so I also have to keep that in mind. It's not about necessarily what they're eating, but when Jacob's I'll just have a granola bar for breakfast. And then he likes a big dinner. Hudson, on the other hand, has we call it his breakfast bag. It's essentially a continental breakfast that you would get in a hotel.
I will be over for that.
I mean, it's fig bars and a pouch and crackers and Bella Vita and a juice. Like he's getting on an international flight or something.
It sounds for that long drive to school that you have.
Lovely. It's lovely. So our guest today is here to
and it's interesting
to change my life,
because I think we have two different issues when it comes to we have two different big questions. Mine's more coming from I want to be cognizant about what I'm feeding my child or children. I don't want them to develop an eating disorder. I went through treatment a long time ago, and not saying that it was anything to do with my parents, but I just am so conscious about the word, the language that's used around her and around other kids. And I don't want to overdo my paranoia on it. It's just you just want to do the right thing, right? And you just want them to just eat when they're hungry and not have it be a thing. So we found the absolute best person. I've been following for her forever, and I know tons of you have as well. You may know her as Mama Knows Nutrition. She is actually local to DFW. Casey Barnes, she's a registered dietitian nutritionist who helps families with young kids make healthy eating approachable and attainable. So you have to follow her on social media. She also has a website, Mama Knows Nutrition. And by the way, just so you know, we're not just bringing in a random person who talks about food on the internet, because there are a lot of those as well. She does have a Master of Clinical Nutrition from UT Southwestern and then earned her bachelor's degree at NYU. Welcome, Mama Knows Nutrition.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I tell you something really exciting?
Yes.
I have only ever recorded podcasts from my closet before.
Well, welcome to the lap of luxury here.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you. And so you have two kids of your own, 6 and 8?
Yeah, that's it.
Are they good eaters?
No. That's
so
part of
she's going to be honest.
I do. Yeah. Because my son, as a baby, he ate everything, and I thought, I am so good at this.
I've done it.
Yeah. And then toddler changed everything. So that's really why I do what I do now.
Interesting. So you transitioned more into focusing specifically on kids once you had your own kids to deal with.
I already was focused on kids, but it was really like this drive to help parents directly and in a bigger way. Like I was starting in one-on-one doing just counseling with people. And then I was like, everybody needs help because this is hard. And that's when I got on social media.
So what do we need to do to maybe never have to come to county? Can we do stuff now that's like proactive so that it doesn't get to the point where now we need to kind of have a food intervention of some sort with our kids?
There are things you can do, but it's also genetic. Like there is research to say that picky eating is a genetic related thing. So you can do what is in your control. And one of the things that people really have a hard time with is once their kid starts refusing foods, they stop serving them, right? Because you're like, why am I going to waste my time? Why am I going to waste the food? But really, when we don't expose them to it anymore, there's no chance of them eating that. So then the number of foods that they like gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And if we're not continuing to serve things, it kind of just continues on that trajectory.
So is it possible that they might not eat it one day, but then you serve it again a week later and they might pick it up that time and say, oh, let me try it?
Yes. So I say never take a toddler seriously when they say, I don't like it.
Okay, that's good. Or just never take a toddler seriously, period.
Agree.
Is there a threshold? Like, is it like, hey, it takes 7 introductions of the same food for a kid to taste it, and if you're going to hit 12, then maybe you really do need to move on. Maybe they don't like Indian takeout.
Yeah, there is this like numbers that float around, and I don't actually think there's any truth to a specific number. I think that you have to keep exposing them because every kid is going to be different. This is like a little bit getting into feeding therapy speak right now.
Do it.
But there is different kind of levels of introduction of food with kids when they have a hard time. So being able to just interact with the food with their hands, be able to smell it, touch it, all of those things come before tasting it. So if you have a kid that's just kind of seeing a food again and again and not feeling like they can taste it, that is not really helping them along that path. Like some kids really need an intervention to help them. But to your point, like if they are eating something, you get them to try it again and again and again, and they still never like it. Like it's okay to not like some foods.
Sure.
I don't like olives.
Sure. I think
will.
There was always a reference to one of the President Bushes who didn't like broccoli, and like even at the White House, like didn't eat it. It was like, I'm the president. I don't have to eat broccoli. I'm going to eat another vegetable. So we're coming up on the holidays. A lot of families will be traveling, going to different families' houses for dinner, maybe traveling, maybe, entertaining with a different culture. How do you encourage kids to get outside of like the mac and cheese, chicken nugget, peanut butter and jelly roller coaster?
I think it can be really overwhelming. We want to think of it from their point of view, and they're in an unfamiliar place. They're not with their regular people. And so it's a lot to take in. There's a lot going on. And I think that it's okay if they do like just eat the bread at the holiday meal because there's lots of other opportunities to explore foods. And when they're not comfortable, it's not a good time to focus on that.
My kids are going to love you.
Kids love bread.
Do you think that we bring it on ourselves? Like so we have again, 2 boys, one PBJ, no problem, here you go. The other one, PBJ, no crust, cut into triangles, right? He'll eat it, but I have to succumb to it. And when I do that and I think to myself, Steve, you brought this on yourself. He didn't come up with the no crust idea. In my mind, as I, fantasize about what it's like to be a dad, I'm like, do you want crust? Because that's what you do. And
I can't believe you didn't cut it into the shape of a heart. I mean, what kind of dad are you?
We have one of those, like
Uncrustables.
You can have a maker. We bought one on Amazon. You can like punch your own Uncrustables.
I have those too.
It's the coolest thing.
Yeah.
It's the coolest thing. But I wonder sometimes, like, did I bring this on myself? Because had you never known no crust was an option, I wouldn't be sitting here trimming bread with a pair of kitchen shears.
You know what? I never put the blame on parents because it is the hardest job in the world. And at the end of the day, you just want your kid to be fed. So in those moments when you're like, they didn't eat anything at breakfast, they didn't eat anything this morning, like, what do I need to do to get you to eat this?
Yeah.
So then we start doing those things where we cater. And kids these days, like, they have it pretty easy. We're encouraged by all these social media parenting accounts to give them choices and give them say. And to a certain point, that's good. But, you know, I have so much compassion for parents and how hard it is.
Totally.
So I will never like blame you and be like, yeah, it's your fault, you know?
What about, I think that there's like a discussion, there's this big social media discussion over dessert, like making dessert no big deal. And it was funny because Steve, it's so interesting. And I wonder if it's because of you growing up as a male versus female, but I just remember so much discussion over words like, oh, I'm going to be bad. I'm going to have dessert. Or like, I really shouldn't have this, but I'm going to. And this is the language that gets stuck in a little person's mind that when they're 41 years old, they're still combating that. Like, that doesn't make you a bad person because you had a cupcake or whatever. So I would love to instill in my children, like, dessert's no big deal. It's something that you have sometimes. Like, we're going to have dessert and it doesn't make you like a good person or a bad person. How do you navigate that?
That is such an important thing to be aware of because you're right. Like, this is something that kids latch onto and they're so black and white. And they're thinking that if you're saying, oh, this is bad for me, then they think, oh, if I eat this, I'm bad too.
Yes.
So I think as parents, that's one of our biggest jobs is to role model for them how we experience food ourselves and our relationship with it. And so it's less about finding the right thing to teach them about it and more about how you model it yourself. Do they see you enjoying a piece of cake and not saying those things like, like now I got to start my diet on Monday.
Yes. Or like, this is such and such minutes on the treadmill. Those kind of things just make me cringe. When somebody says it around Brighton, I'm like,
I know.
Like, just let her have like the food. We don't do a ton of, we don't have, she's probably thinking I've been around you. You don't give her a ton of junk food. We don't. But like, I think it's the language around it that can be bothersome, but that's interesting. Just eating the dessert yourself and having it be inconsequential, just like it's a part of the day.
Exactly.
So on the flip side, and I might not be getting an A+ for this, but
it's not about us getting A+. It's about learning.
But if we were, so what are your thoughts on incentivizing children with food?
Okay.
So like, and let me explain. So like you pooped on the potty, you get a piece of candy, you know, like, hey, finish your dinner and you can have dessert. So one of our kids, again, our older son is a good eater. He's a bit of a people pleaser as well. Our other son, my husband sometimes will get into it with him at, you have to eat. Okay, have two of those, have just one, and it's like, dude, he is stubborn. You are stubborn. This is going nowhere. He will eat, but on his own time. So sometimes we'll be like, Hudson, okay, we're not going to have dessert if we're not going to eat, dinner. And then when it comes time for family time and it comes time for dessert, he'll be like, I'm hungry. And we'll be like, okay, how about that meatball from dinner? And I'll be like, okay, cool. And he'll sit and he'll eat, the meatball, and then he gets a popsicle or whatever. But kind of back to the original portion, we kind of bait them with food.
I mean, I can tell by how you're saying it that I'm going to say I don't like it. So if it's kind of a one-off thing, like I gave my kids M&Ms for going on the potty, whatever, they're not going to remember that. But we don't want it to become the habit and the routine of every single meal. You have to eat this much to get dessert. There's something I really like to share with parents, which is you as a parent provide, the child decides. So what that means is that our job is to decide what we serve, when, and the kids' job is if they eat and how much. And so with those divisions of responsibility, there's nowhere in there where we decide how much they eat. Like they have to do that. So we then eliminate that bargaining of like, you need to eat 1 bite, you need to eat 2 bites, because we want them to listen to internal cues. We're all born with this ability to know how much we need. And we get away from that because of external messaging. But kids really can tune into that and know how much they need to eat.
So follow up, like in your house with your own kids, if it's a situation where maybe your 6-year-old didn't eat their dinner or, and then, an hour later is like, I want a bag of chips. What do you do?
Well, they know the rule about that. So at dinner time, this is your meal. We do serve dessert with dinner. When we have dessert, we serve it right alongside, so you get your cookie on your plate.
I like that.
What?
That was a tip that I got from her too.
Yeah.
Because it lessens like the excitement over it, the bad, the good, it's just a thing. It's another food. Like I'm guessing sometimes you have it and sometimes you don't. Or do
Yeah.
like,
Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
So like, I feel like the parents listening are going to be like, okay, but what if my kid is like, okay, I'm going to eat the cookie and screw you on the rest of it. I'm not eating anything else.
I get that question every single day. And it's fine. So like thinking about their nutrition, one meal is really kind of inconsequential, and that's okay. Like a lot of kids will eat more earlier in the day and not as much later on. Once they know that this is the routine of like, okay, this is dinner, my kids know if they are still hungry after dinner, you can have a banana, you can have a spoon of peanut butter, or you can have a banana with peanut butter. Like those are the options for after dinner. I mean, I'm not saying we never deviate from that, but that's pretty much the standard. So there's always something available, but it's not something exciting.
Is that okay? So what about like, let's say at dinner, they really just didn't eat. They came home not hungry. Like they're listening to their cues, then they're in bed. And I can't ever tell, like when this happens, I can't tell, is she hungry? Does she want to hang out longer?
Right.
Because it'll be like in bed, like we already brushed teeth, like we're in bed. She read her books to me. I read my books to her. And then she's like, oh man, I'm really hungry. Would you do the peanut butter banana then? Or was it like you already brushed your teeth?
At that point, yeah, I'm like, it's water. That is hard for me though. My husband is easy. He'll just be like, no, go to bed. I'm like, but what if they're really
like, what if they're actually hungry?
What if they starve?
Casey, that's the thing. What if they're actually hungry?
I know. But have you ever gone to bed hungry? Like you survived.
I mean, clearly I have not.
No, like, Okay, so the one word I don't hear you utter is goldfish. And I'm a little bothered by this because it's a word I hear multiple times a day. And I have to say, so like and I know you're going to disagree with me. So our kids, we're not a big athlete family. So there's some physical activity, but not to the extent, I mean, some of these kids are in like 10 sports and they're in first grade, right? Which is great. It's just not our thing, right? So my son loves him some goldfish. He does not enjoy running. And I look at that and I'm like, are you getting a little thick? Like, I mean, we're big.
I'm canceling you.
Like we're big people to be. I'm 6'2", my husband's 6'3". I weigh north of 250 pounds, like genetically, like, and it comes from a place of like, I don't want you to be tormented for being a big kid. Yeah. And you're not a big kid yet. And he is very responsive. I'll be like, hey, buddy, I think we're going to do goldfish every other night. And he'll be the one, I'll be like, hey, what do you want for, snack for family time? He'll be like, well, I had goldfish last night, so I can't have them tonight. So I'm going to have, and he'll choose something else, which is great. But I get in my head a little bit about like, am I creating unhealthy food cues for you because I'm trying to play long ball here and keep you from being hurt?
Yeah, it's really hard to balance. And I think a lot of parents would relate to how you're feeling about it. What I call goldfish is crunchy air because it's one of those snacks where it's not very satisfying. It's delicious and it's fun to eat, but it's not very satisfying. And it's harder to follow those internal cues when you're eating something like that just on its own. So I like to pair those things with something else that's like, a cheese stick or
peanut butter.
Yeah, whatever. Something else, even a piece of fruit that's going to have some fiber with it to help with that. But I don't think it's wrong for you to be talking to him about making food choices and how that affects you. Like, you're not telling him, like, if you eat this, you're going to be fat and people are going to make fun of you. Like, that's not what you're saying. No,
I literally say that to him. I mean, he's old enough, right? Are we not supposed to do that? I would never.
No, but I mean, I see what you're saying. Just the concern over, like, you kind of look at your children, you see all components of them, and we all bring things from the past with us.
Right.
Things that might have hurt our feelings, and you don't want them to deal with it.
Right. That's my baggage, not his. I mean, the kid has no baggage. You know what I mean? But that's so okay. How do we introduce a new food? I mean, as other than like serving it to you 10 times and hoping that it'll take, is there like a way that we do this?
Yeah, there's a lot of tips. So one of my favorite ones is the teeny tiny tasting portion, which is just think of like the size of a grain of rice when you're introducing something new. And you're like, do they even really taste it when it's that small? And like they kind of do, but it's in this approachable way. I'm all about like no pressure with the approach because my goal is for kids to grow into healthy adults who can make good food decisions. And it's not important to me if they eat one spear of broccoli today or not. So offering them those teeny tiny tasting portions, and then also something that's called food chaining, which is starting with something they like and then choosing something that's very similar to it. So for example, if your kid likes bread and they've never tried pita or they've never tried a tortilla or naan bread, so we're kind of going with something similar but different.
Okay.
We did
It's
that with
like
bread.
It's like Michelin star servings. Like think of when you go to like the fanciest restaurant ever and they give you like
that's my other pet peeve.
You pay the most and then you get the little thing. I really like that. That's a great tip rather than a big blob of it that can feel so intimidating.
Well, and do you populate their plate with stuff that they might not want, or is that?
I do. You're like supposed to do family style, but y'all, I can barely get a meal on the table.
Yeah, it's too many bowls to wash.
Yeah.
Like when my mom's in town, we do family style because she washes the bowls.
She probably makes them on a potter's wheel first.
She makes them on a potter's wheel. But yeah, I've gone through that, and I'm glad that you've kind of eliminated that too, because I'm like, I can't dish up and then wash all the bowls.
Yeah.
And do you recognize that, hey, this micro portion is something new and I want you to taste it? Or do you like kind of mix it in and be like, gotcha, you just had cilantro, you know?
Well, I do usually, like, they'll see it there because I'll kind of place it as its own thing and I'll say what it is. With young kids, it's really helpful to give them kind of like an anchor of what it's similar to. So maybe like it's salty like a pretzel or it's crunchy like a carrot. So they can kind of like relate it to something they already know what it is.
Can you give us an example of what you're packing for lunch? I love when you do the videos of like what you're packing. I bought the same lunchbox you have so I can follow it. She's got these little stampers that cut like cucumbers out or whatever. But can you give us an example of like what might be for lunch tomorrow?
Yeah. My daughter is very tricky because she doesn't like sandwiches. So I pretty much...
all sandwiches?
Yeah. Yeah. Just no.
Even Uncrustables? Well, maybe Steve hasn't done the triangles yet.
Just sandwiches in general. It's a big food group.
I know. It makes packing lunch really hard because I'm also like, I'm not about to go cook a meal separately. You see those people on TikTok.
I'm friends with those people. It is like,
okay,
and now
are we not supposed to be doing that?
Well, no, but I mean, they will do hot macaroni and cheese. Like that can't happen for me in the morning.
No.
Like they're making hot macaroni and cheese and then sending it in a separate container that stays hot and then with like all these different sides.
But like cooking, and you're gonna, I know. Look at how she's looking at me.
No, I'm not. No.
We had a friend of ours, and I was talking about something, and I was talking about her kids, who's the same age as ours, eating salmon, and I was like, God, they like salmon? She was like, yeah, it's what I made for dinner. And I was like, they eat what you eat for dinner? She was like, yeah. And I was like, oh my
I know.
God.
And I was like
what? Like, what? Am I supposed to be doing that?
For me, it's not out of like, I'm so great. It's out of just lack of capacity at the end of the day to cook two different things. It's not.
I'm talking like chicken nuggets and some tater tots in the air fryer when Doug and I are having like.
I mean, I do that
like
some
nights.
Spicy. It's a mix. Like I usually try to make something that has components. So we make like burrito bowls or something. Maybe my kid's only going to eat the rice.
Oh, there you go.
Or just the ground beef, whatever. But yeah, so for lunches,
let's go back to that.
Yeah, I do like it. I guess they're like components of things. I'll think about the protein. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to get some cheese in there, a cheese stick or whatever. I'll pack her some whole grain crackers and there's our starch. I want to get a fruit and a veggie if I can. So throw in some blueberries and some cucumbers. And then I kind of am like, I don't know, I feel like there should be something more in here. So I'll add like dried mango or something like that.
Do you do adult lunch packing?
I know. Does that sound good?
It sounds delicious.
It sounds really
I tell you, I volunteer in the cafeteria at my son's school. And I will say, to your point, it's frightening is the wrong word, but it's not uncommon for me to see a young boy come in with like 10 hamburgers, or like an overflowing plate of chicken nuggets, and like a female student come through and she has like water and 4 carrot sticks. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why like the verbiage I just think is so dangerous around like why it's like they could both be served the same thing, but I think it's the verbiage that's different or the way that it's presented. That's why I like the idea of just putting dessert with dinner.
That is a nice idea.
That's so smart.
I will say though, when my kids will be like, well, my belly's full. I'm like, okay, well then we're not having dessert. I'm like, well, it's full from dinner. It's not, which I totally identify with, right? Like I could be like, oh my God, that was such a good meal.
Dessert.
Yes,
but I could have some ice cream.
Can, so it's not
Yeah.
wrong for them either. That's
Right.
what, I don't like to hold them to standards that I don't hold myself to. If there's a delicious dessert and I'm full, I still want to taste it. So I'm not going to guilt them for that either.
Okay, so let's, we're running out of time.
Oh
So
my gosh.
where can people, I could talk to her all night, but
So good.
they can really learn more by following you on Instagram. Where's the best place for people to get some more tips?
Absolutely. On Instagram, I'm just at Mama Knows Nutrition, and my website is mamaknowsnutrition.com. There's a ton of free things on there for toddlers, babies, kids, everybody.
Well, I hope you come back and see us sometime. Thank you so
love
much
that.
for coming in. And I'm so glad to get you out of the closet for your first podcast. I can tell
Who
you.
knew we were going to be doing this with
It's
people?
a liberating experience, I'll tell you.
Steve, you have to get the little cutters. They're like cookie cutters for
But
vegetables.
listen, and the parents that they're like, I don't have time to be carving a swan out
but
of a
that's
cantaloupe.
why it's not a
before
carb. It's just
school.
a little. You just do it the night before for like a cucumber.
Or
a
I
piece
just
of
put
fruit.
money on their account for school and say, go through the line.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, supposedly somebody out there is making sure those are balanced. So
Well,
they do. I mean, they
Trust
do have.
me, you haven't met Susan, our lunch lady. I mean, trust me, she's on it.
She is. Do they like the school lunch?
You know what? I will say, and this is apparently at the middle school, it's like really crazy, but I will say they generally there's always fresh fruit.
Yeah.
Oftentimes there is salmon that some of these kids choose. There's a hot lunch. Yes, the other day was like chicken tempura and edamame. So like the kids are eating edamame.
Oh, can I volunteer in the
Yeah,
lunch
right.
room?
I mean, there are Uncrustables. There's usually hummus and chips or pita chips so they really do a good job. But also Jacob so kindergarten, first grade, you can choose hot lunch or cold lunch. Your plate comes populated. Second grade, it's a la carte. Second to fourth, it's a la carte. So you can go through that lunch line and it's like I'm having 3 bags of chips.
Oh,
and
you could pick. There's
you pick
not a
whatever you
limit.
want.
Our school has a limit. There was a big outrage with the parents last year saying like the kid was like, it would be like at a bar where you'd say like it was payday, shots on me. They'd be like, I got my thing filled, chips on me, and they'd buy chips for their whole class and then like 2 cookies for themselves, and that's what they would have. So now there is like a spending limit on certain
So they
items,
do
I
have,
guess.
so as they come through, they'll be like, hey, this kid has reached their spending limit. Or sometimes it'll say, hey, Johnny's only allowed to have 1 chocolate milk a day as opposed to 2, whatever. And it's your job as the cashier to be like, listen, Johnny,
sorry, Johnny.
But some of these kids come through the line. Like I had a kid a couple of weeks ago and it was like gluten sensitivity and he had an Uncrustable. And I was like, hey, heads up. Like you're like,
You might get diarrhea.
right. Like he's like, I'm good. He's like, it's okay. I was like, okay. I mean, I'm not gonna
That's probably Brighton with her dairy.
It's not my parenting moment here.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, the consequence and he was, I guess those are,
Maybe
those,
a little rash. I don't know.
But I mean,
it
come on.
depends.
Is there a more perfect food than an Uncrustable? I don't blame this kid.
They're pretty yummy.
They're
I guess
pretty
maybe
delicious.
mom needs to get the gluten-free bread and the Amazon
Do they make
Uncrustable.
gluten-free Uncrustables?
Oh, no, but we have to make it. I mean, you just
But like, can't they do that? I feel like that would be a very easy next
Yeah.
step for the people at Smuckers.
yeah. What's
make
up,
that.
Smuckers?
Don't you think? Or we could do
I
it.
agree. I mean, I'm fine with gluten personally,
Do our-
but for
Yeah.
Bobby or whoever he
Do our
was, that would
podcast
be
from
great.
Tahiti selling gluten-free Uncrustables on the internet. Done. Okay, speaking of the internet, here's where you can find us. We are on iTunes. We're on Amazon
Spotify.
Podcast, Spotify, Google, also
YouTube,
on
technically.
YouTube. Yeah, I mean, hey, come see us on YouTube if you want to get a little visual on what's going on. Please please subscribe so we can continue to do what we love. And most importantly, go find yourself a friend you don't need to clean the house for. I have one.